Oh, I'm on the small screen again. That's what we want. Good evening, everybody, and how are we all doing today? It is Sunday, the 3rd of August. August already. Time is flying by this year. It honestly feels like I have not had time to sit still and think about what we're doing. It's just flying by. Hope everyone's well. Hope everyone's having a great week. You can tell I'm still very untidy at the moment. You'll find out more about what's been going on little bit later on. But before that, let's see who is joining us tonight. Adrian is there saying, hello, Richard and all. Good evening to you. Excuse me. I feel like I'm going to sneeze any second. I told you. I warned you. I said it was coming. Adrian is there saying, hello to Richard and all. Good evening to you. Kate is there saying, good evening, Veg. Veg Army, good evening to you. Gary is there saying, good evening all. Good evening to you. Jenny is there. Hello, everyone. I hope you are well. Good evening to you. Scott is there saying good evening all. Good evening to you. Tabo Street. Good evening, Veg Podcasters. Good evening to you. A lot of Chef Nathan. Good evening all. Good evening to you. Anna Jones. Good evening, Garners. Good evening to you. Richard Golding. Hello all. Good evening to you. Lovely to see you. Graham Arnold. Good evening, everyone. Hope you are well. Good evening to you. Stuart Jackson. Good evening. Evening, Richard and Veg Army. I am happy to be back from my holiday. Happy to be back from your holiday. I'd love to be on holiday at the moment. Rob says, good evening all. Good evening to you. Andrew Norris, evening one and all. Good evening to you. I think that is everybody. But everybody else, if you are watching, feel free to jump in, say hello. Would love to hear from you and join in the conversation. Now, tonight's topic up for discussion is all about keeping gardening records. What do you do to keep track of everything that you do in the garden? What is it that you do in particular? So one of the oldest, or many gardeners will say, one of their biggest things has always been the notebook, keeping track of when they sow seeds, what the weather has been like, and things like that. In the past, I've used a diary, and it was a good diary actually. I would, every time I did some work on the garden, I would write a little diary entry and just say what I did, and it worked very well. I kept that for an entire year, but I've never been able to find the right diary since. And one of the troubles I have is when I was writing these things out, I'm sorry, that might have just gone into the screen. Let me move that out of the way. When I was writing all these things out, all these datas, all this logs, I felt I was putting in too much information. I was making it bigger than what I thought it was, or than what I thought it needed. And we'll get into that as well in just a moment. And there I was, sort of writing up too many things, running out of space, and then it became, if I didn't write it down, I got behind, and that's when things go wrong. So who here, let's put your hands up if you keep track of everything you do in a garden. Do you keep a log? Do you keep a diary? Do you keep anything like that? Just put a raise of your hands if you do anything like that. Digwell is late here, just putting the roast on. What roast are you having? Love to hear about that. What have we got? Rebecca is joined and says, evening all. Good evening to you. We're talking about keeping a diary, keeping a record of what you do in a garden. Digwell is waving his hand, I think that is, looking at that. Anna Jones has put her hand up, and Stuart Jackson has put his hand up. 3 people so far keep track, keep a log of everything they do in the garden. So what do you use? What do you use to keep... Oh, Rob is also put his hand up and waving, saying he keeps a track of everything he does in the garden. What do you use? I'm going to open that up now. What do you use? And the reason I want to focus on this, I've been thinking a lot about this because I do like to keep track of everything that I do. I tend to use audio more than anything, but I want to be able to create a diary, create a log of everything that I do in the garden, like when I sow seeds, etc., etc. I could just use paper. I'm more pen and paper guy, but that doesn't feel very good. And if I haven't got it on me, I tend to forget about it. So I could use my phone and an app on there to write it. What do you use? What do you use? Turbo Stream says, I started using a gardening journal, but typically I stopped using it when I mislaid it. This is what I have the problem with. This is where I've been wondering about what if I had a gardening diary, would I mislay it? What would I do then? And would that work? Andrew says, I keep a log of the flowers in my wildflower meadow and how some flowers migrate. That's interesting. So how do you what sort of records are you keeping in that? That's a question I'm going to get into a little bit later on, actually. Turbo Stream is giving us the okay just to be different, so I'm guessing that means he keeps a diary as well. Rob says, my videos and plant labels, plus I always weigh my spuds. So I've often wondered about this. Like, I have my cameras with me at all times, but I don't always record everything I'm doing, purely because I end up. Well, there's a lot of stuff that is just boring, weeding, sowing seeds, so I don't record a lot of stuff. Do you do like a video diary where you just share everything that you're doing? But what about? Well, we'll get into that in a moment. Roast chicken, Digwell was having roast spuds, carrots, swede, collie, cabbage, green beans, runners peas, mushroom, onion gravy, and stuffing. Enough for an army there. That's an army, feeding an army there. Jenny says, I don't really keep notes. I use photos and Instagram, but next year I would like to make more of an effort, a record and keepsake to look back on. So this is where this sort of topic is coming from, because I have been thinking about, I know when I've kept records in the past, I know, take my garlic, I always sow that around the 20th of September. I always sow my potatoes around, St. Patrick's Day. So I would like to be able to keep notes on these sort of things when I actually do things, and whether that and how I can keep that going. This is where I'm going with this. How can we keep it going? So yeah, make a keepsake, something to look back on. Stuart says, I tend to use a notebook for everything I sow for the sales, so that I can tell people what is growing and what will be for sale later on. Okay, this sounds interesting. So you're keeping it for sales, so you can communicate with your people. Okay, we'll get into that a little bit more. Gary says, I tried but failed. I think I'm going to use a private Instagram thing to log things with photos and descriptions. Easy to search back for reference. Interesting. Instagram, that's popped up twice as a way of keeping records, but okay, we'll get into this. Rebecca says, I don't keep a diary, so interesting to get some inspiration. I do like to use Instagram to look back, though. Yeah, again, I do that. Instagram, I don't post much on Instagram. I go in waves. Yeah. Turbo Extreme says, I now use an app called Journal on my iPhone. I use it to journal for my mental health, so now add a line in it if I sow something. Interesting. Digwell says, I use Microsoft Excel, new sheets every year showing sowing, germination, planted date, harvest dates, yields, etc. Okay, so sounds amazing, Digwell. But I tend to forget to add it to the journal, so it's a bit haphazard. You're right, I forget the passengers, but back in a bit. So basically, there's a wide range of things that people are using. So a notebook, a diary, a Microsoft Excel, computer programs, apps like that. A wide range of things that people are using. What are you keeping a record of? What are you keeping a record of? And I bring this up because I've recently, last year, was it the year before, I put up a weather station in my garden, and I've been using that to keep an eye on the weather, etc. I played around with it last week, and I want to try and keep a better log of the weather and how that affects the garden, how that the weather changes affect the garden. So I'm sort of thinking if I could create, maybe not a, well, I don't know. I don't know how we're going to create it, because I would like to do a notebook, but I feel something on my phone would be better that I can attach photos to. I can attach all these details. But what do you record? What details do you keep in your records? Jenny says, I would like to use my records from next year to also track weather patterns, warmer earlier this year, cool summer like now, etc., etc. Yeah, yeah. This is exactly it. This is what I'm saying. I want to track the weather patterns as well as what we're sowing, etc. Rob says, when I sow seeds, I always mark them who, from, what day, and what they are. Are these on your labels? Because I think you said you just use labels. Or do you put this all in your notebook? Curious. That's all. Curious. Alice says, I take photos, make notes in a notebook, and scribble things in an old seed catalogue beside the varieties I've grown in the past. Interesting. So using an old seed catalogue with the seeds that you've brought in the past to make a note of how they're doing. That's quite an interesting idea as well. Turbo Stream says, I don't tend to want to log everything, as once it's in the ground, then it's in the ground. Sure. This is where I've been wondering if I sometimes keep too much information, because I try and, when it's in the ground, I like to record how much I feed it and when I feed it and things like that. And do we go right down to what time of day we're doing it? So, yeah, there's a lot of questions. Scott is saying, I find photos make a good visual record. Yep. Providing you, do you ever, it's going to be an old question. I don't really ever go back on old photos though. So does that work? Going to throw that out there as well. Turbo Stream says, I used to take photos, but even that has stopped. Yeah. Jenny says, I will have a pocket-sized notepad for when outside. I can transfer that into record log when I get the chance. It's raining, etc., etc. Actually, that's another thing about notebooks. When it's raining and the paper gets wet, it becomes a little bit useless. I used to keep a waterproof notebook and a pencil that worked really well for that when it was wet. But again, the trouble is, if I didn't have it on me, I didn't take the notes, and then my notes were not detailed enough. So get into it a bit more. Browns have a seed sowing log on their catalogue for the past few years. Interesting. And Rob says, yes, on my labels. And if seeds don't do much good, I clean the label when it is time. But ones I want to grow again, I keep the labels. Fair enough. And Tower Stream, I'm not sure or what I do with the info for I was recording it all. I'm definitely losing interest in growing it on the allotment at the moment. I think everyone is in that boat at the moment, or there's certainly a lot of people who are struggling this year and last year because we've had two very hard years. Last year was very wet. This year's been very, very dry. All I can say is just start thinking about what you can do to make it better for next year. Start really planning, start making the amendments that we need. There's still time this year, however, to keep a track of things. Scott says, photos work in a scrapbook with an instant print camera. Yeah, okay. So that's another thing you've got to carry with you, though. I ever at home been known to shout at the Alexa through the door to remind me of something I want to remember? Interesting, actually. I've never thought about using Alexa to make notes, but that does sound like a good idea as well. And Toby Streams, I'm currently redesigning my grown area to reduce work and weeding areas that I don't grow in, etc. Yeah. And Nicholas joined. Evening, Richard, and all. Sorry, I'm a bit late. So we're talking about keeping notes of your gardening. So let's bring this back in and sort of really get it down. So one of the problems that I said right at the beginning is not having my notebook on me. So I feel I need to lean more on something I always have on me is my mobile phone. Always in my pocket. I never leave home without it. It's always charged up because of how I've set my life up. So that for me is probably one of the most important things that I need to remember to use to take notes. The trouble I do have is I'm not very good at actually pulling this out my pocket when I'm on the allotment or in the garden and saying, take a photo. It tends to stay in my pocket. So that for me is something I've got to improve, actually getting that out of my pocket and taking a photo. And I say that because I'm a keen photographer. But I tend to take photos on my big camera, but then I don't always have my camera on me. What I would like and I'm trying to do this on our website to a certain extent, is like a daily diary feature with behind the scenes for people to use as well, where we can keep track of all these sort of things. So we could list the seeds that we're sowing, upload photos, etc., and make sure that we keep on track of that. But that's going way ahead. The thing that I really want to keep track of is the weather as well, and how it can affect us and how it affects our gardening. So there's lots of information I feel we can get bogged down with, and do we really need it? It's see, Turbo Stream says, I'm bored of it, Rob, I think, but then that happens with me. Yeah, I know how you feel. I do know how you feel. It's especially at this time of year, it's a commitment. Turbo Stream says, I've started putting my phone in my bag as a way to reduce my screen time on the alarm. And that's exactly the same as me. Doom scrolling, isn't it? You spend far too long scrolling through reels than actually doing stuff. And that's something I'm trying to reduce or try not to do so much of. Digwell says, other data, compost type, fertilizer type, and when pest treatment, and when watering date, and how much seed supply, and so much more. Yes. So Digwell, I think Digwell is a good example of somebody who takes lots of notes and is able to follow it through, able to completely keep those notes and transfer them over onto his computer. What's the secret? What's the secret behind that? What is the secret on making sure you're able to keep all your notes all the time? What is the secret? Let us know your thoughts on that. Rob says, I get fed up every year when work is really busy, so can't get down the plot. Yeah, exactly. So one of the things I said I was going to fill you in, I spoke about this last week. As you know, we're having some work done on our house. It started off with a driveway and it ended up with having our drains dug up. Well, it's been a bit of a nightmare, but we are on the home stretch now, or I think we're on home stretch anyway. Our drains have been completely replaced, so they are all safe. That was finished on Friday morning, so everything's backfilled and work has continued. But at the moment, my garden just looks like Steptoe's yard because we've got stuff all over the place. And I'm finding it like I was longing for a wash. And we couldn't wash because we had nowhere for the water to go. So I've been a little bit this week. I've been a little bit pot off when I'm going, oh, what do I do? What do I do? I don't want to go out in the garden because I can't do anything. I can't get dirty, etc., etc. But we're on that final bound now that the driveway is nearing, or the work is progressing. Work is progressing with the driveway and the path. So we're back on track. A 2-week job has now gone on to about 6 weeks, I think it is. Turbo Extreme says, I'm trying to work out a plan for next year to keep my interest in it. I've already floated the idea of downsizing the plot. I've also considered walking away from it, but don't want to do that. So here's my thing. Have a good, long, hard think about what you really want to do. And if you do downsize, would you miss it? Would you miss it? Digwell says, anyway, there's no point worrying about any of that now. Angela Rayner has opened the floodgates for councils to set off all allotments for housing, etc. All protection rights removed. Yeah, I've seen this. I haven't read the article. I haven't been able to read the article because it's only on the Telegraph. But I've heard it doesn't look good. But I'm not going to get into that because I don't know all the details. Stuart says, I will write on everything down when I come in for a coffee, so I also keep all the empty seed packets until the plants are sold or in the garden. Yeah. So you're just basically keeping everything written down when you have a cup of coffee, when you have a break. Fair enough. Digwell says Steptoe yard, so it looks better than normal. Yeah, it does. No, it doesn't look better than normal. It's just I cannot get to everything. But yeah, it does look like Steptoe's yard at the moment. I'm getting annoyed with it. I know it says it's easy to get discouraged when there is so much to do and the weather is too hot, too rainy, too windy. I find encouragement and inspiration from many YouTube channels. That's exactly what we're all about: inspire and encourage more people to grow their own food. So I say, Jenny says she has done what? I don't know the full details. I'll say that I don't know the full details. Turbo says, Rob, I have to April to decide. And then Digwa says, I take a sheet of paper to the plot. Plan for the day, e.g. feed this crop, that, etc. Plus a pencil in my pocket for extras. Then I do entered into an Excel when back home. So I've only just recently started learning how to use Excel. I'll be honest with you. In my new job, I'm using Excel a lot more, which is something I've never done before. So I find that interesting. But how easy is it to go? I guess it is quite easy. How do you set it up? How do you set it up to keep track of everything, Digwell? That's a really hard one to explain on a live stream. But do you have different sheets, different programs? Let us know. Let us know. One reason not to log stuff at the moment is there isn't much growing going on. Yeah. Things have been slow. This year has been incredibly tricky because it has been so dry. We've done okay, but we think, or I certainly think we could have done better. Beans and peas have pretty much dried out or failed. Squashes have been a struggle, but we've got a few. Root crops have been a struggle as well. But these are all the sort of things that we need to keep a note of and keep track of. So, yeah. This is the point of keeping notes, I guess, is so that we can remind ourselves of when things were tricky, and why things didn't work. Nicholas says, think yourself lucky, Richard. My Eco 4 grant started 8th of November and still not finished, plus the damage they caused. Now taking legal route plus MP. What's your Eco 4 grant? What's going on there? Let me know. Terry Stream says, absolutely, IGG. It's been a bad year 2 years running. Let's try and make it a better year next year. This is what I would say. I feel that next year, if we start preparing it for next year now, and by that I mean drawing up a plan, sowing green manures and looking after our soil, getting our soil into good shape, ready for the winter. And then I think next year we should be good. Rob says Market Mark's allotment has just announced that he might have done his last YouTube video. I'm not sure if he will give up his plot. Interesting. Why? I know this isn't what we're meant to be talking about. Why do you think so many people are giving up their allotment at the moment, or what is it? What is it that's changing from there? Digwell says, I will put a few screenshots on that Facebook group. Excellent. And Jenny, I know a lot of YouTube channels first set up as a personal vlog, then they grew from there. Again, this trouble, yeah, personal vlogs, tough one. Because I think the reason I say it's a tough one is that if I videoed every day I go to the allotment, every day I do something in the garden, it would be a pretty boring video because there's a lot of little everyday jobs such as weeding and watering that are done on those particular days. The bigger jobs are saved for the weekend. Yeah. Nicholas says, I don't tend to log much this year. As you know, I've been rebuilding my veg garden with new paver paths and raised higher beds. Excellent. That could be a good show topic. What could? Why are people giving up their allotments? Yeah, I think it is the weather. I have to agree. It's been a tough year this year. It really has been one of the toughest years. But I said that last year as well. It has been a really tough year because it has been so dry. But I think if we're smart about it, not every year is going to be like this. I think if we can plan for the worst and hope for the best, then we might be in a better position. Does that make sense? Planning for the worst and hoping for the best. I know, he says, taking notebook, paper and pencil out to the garden helps. List of things to do, but often I'm pressed for time and decide to make notes later. Later often never happens. Need to start better habits. This is it. This is exactly my thoughts, is that it's not so much about what when later doesn't happen. This was one of my problems that I had, and it's the same with so many things. Later never happens, so I've got to do it there and then. I don't always take notebook and paper and pencils with me, but I do take my phone, and I think that's got to be the secret. If I take my phone with me, I can do something on the phone. We can come up with it. Turbo Stream says, I did watch a YouTuber recently. He listed the problems growing your own food, and was it worth it? Yeah, which YouTuber was that? Because I would say it's still worth it. It's just taking the rough with the smooth. Planning and prepping for next year. I think we might talk about that next week then. There we go. Make a note of that, Jenny. That'll be next week's topic. Rob says, and also the price for everything. Everything has gone up. Everything is expensive, but so is the price of food. I cannot believe, I mean, I very rarely go to the shops, but I cannot believe just how expensive food is now, and how easy it is to spend 50 quid on a week's shopping. It's crazy, Italia, crazy. Richard, is your plot by the new flyover in LA? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yeah, that new road is one that's given me a bit of a nightmare. Jenny, according to the Daily Telegraph, Rayner declares war on allotment. Council could cash in on public gardens to tackle funding crisis under new rules. We won't get into it. It's a politics thing. I don't know. I haven't read the article, but there's something going on there. Turbo Stream says, I'm actually drawing up a plan to put in beds, extending the grass path so I can concentrate on just the growing area. There we go. So you are making plans. Do you find, I certainly do, I find that making plans gets me excited for next year. And this is one of the things that I think this notebook would be good for, to make plans for next year. Jane's allotment, I think, she did list the plus points too for balance. Okay. I don't know that one. Okay. Sorry, I was reading that to try and understand what is going on. Although I'm not quite sure I do understand, so I'm not going to read that just yet. Eco4 grant, heating, solar installation, flooded my kitchen, damaged ceiling, 2 front large windows now need replacing, damaged bedroom carpet needs replacing, told remove a built-in wardrobe. Right. Yeah, I know how you feel. Gary says, I've given up my old plot so I can concentrate on just my friends next year. I'm actually quite excited now. Things are going to be much more manageable. Lots to say in next week's show. Please, Gary, send us a video or something to tell us more about it. That would be great. I think we could learn a lot from that. Rob says, if you grow from seed, it is worth it. Buying plants from garden centre, etc., is very, very expensive. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things. Growing your own food can be expensive, but you get, and this is what I've always said, you get a higher quality, full of more nutrients food for your money. So you're basically paying economy prices for food that you would normally get in a farmer's market or farm shop. The most expensive food on the market you can grow yourself. Jenny says, I spend well over £150 a week. Free from has gone up, sometimes 4 times more expensive, and would definitely be growing more next year. This is something I've been thinking a lot about, and I think we need to focus more on next year because food has got expensive. Although I fully support farmers, I think they do not earn enough. I do think that food has got so expensive that people are struggling, and I'm concentrating on this a lot more, or going through my head, saying we all need to concentrate on more. Idaho says to Jenny, you're right. I started with a blog, then went to a YouTube vlog. I was thinking I should go back and reactivate the blog because it made me write the record. Yeah, perhaps there is something in it. But again, I come back to whether it's how much detail. So one of the questions that I was asking, and I feel we need to envelop a bit more, is what information do we need to record? What information should we be recording? So let's say we go down the allotment. Do we just record everything that we've done that day? So we've weeded A, B, and C. We've sown these seeds. The weather was like this. What information should we be recording in our diaries? And if we're going to, let's call it a diary for argument's sake. What information should we be recording in our diaries, in your opinion? Digwell says 8 allotment sites sold off so far. Scott says I'm going to cover most of the allotment next year in wildflower mixes and leave myself with a few small beds to grow food in. There's a lot to be said. A lot to be said for wildflowers. However, there was, what was it? There's a lot of debate at the moment because a lot of farmers, as we know, farmers are paid sometimes to grow more wildflowers. But we've got to think more about food security at the same time. And sure, if you're finding it hard, then wildflowers are a good thing. But we've got to think about food security as well. Anna says, after 2 awful years, this one has actually been a very good one so far. I'd much rather be out there watering all day than helplessly watching the garden flood. Every cloud has a silver lining, and I agree. If we had saved more rainwater, it would have been a problem. Just meant more time spent watering. Digwell says it was in reference to Rob saying Mark was thinking of quitting his plots. Yeah, okay, with you now. I'm with you now. Toby Stream says I'm looking forward to putting these beds in once the bits are clear. Be an autumn job. Absolutely. Gary says I think KISS principles are important for documenting to keep it manageable and useful for the future. Yeah, keep it simple, stupid. I agree. And this is the trouble I have had when I've kept diaries in the past, is I've not kept it simple because I've wanted to put too much information in there. And it'd be things like, I know some people, I don't do this myself, but some of the great garden writers have said they've documented when they've heard the first bird tweeting, particular birds, they know what they are, or the first leaf on certain trees, etc., etc. First daffodil showing itself. So how far do we go? How much information do we put into our records? The things I want to know in the past are sowing dates and varieties. Things for the future are to-do lists and next steps. Oh, that is a really good way. Recording the past and planning for the future. Yeah. Oh, that is a good plan. Good thinking there. Jenny says, I'm going to keep a record where my seeds come from. I've had so many sowings that didn't take, especially beans. That way I can see if a company is worth avoiding or ordering more from. Yeah, it makes you think, doesn't it? It does make you think. Turbo Stream says, as for a record, do we actually need to record anything? For me, probably not, but others like to look back on things. For me, it seems to clutter up my mind recently. So the point I feel that we need to record information is because of the fact that we want to be able to look back on in the future. So let's say one year we sow carrot seeds in March and they germinate and they grow beautifully and they end up with brilliant carrots. The next year we try sowing them at the same time or maybe later, we can see what difference it makes. But also if we can track things like the temperature, the weather, and things like that, we can see how that affects germination and how our carrots grow at the same time. That for me is the point of keeping track of certain vegetables, which is why I think one of the troubles we do have is going back through all this information and finding out what we've done. it does make it very tricky to keep a track of that. Jenny says, I tend to use the same sowing compost. Many grew some, so compost, different types of compost. Perhaps that's something we need to record as well, different types of compost, how that affects our plants. Yesterday I sowed some 10-year-old seeds, 4 to a sale, so hope one germinates. You never know. You never know when it comes to seeds. I do tend to get rid of mine when they are past their use by date, but that's purely because I run out of space otherwise. Let me get my words out. Jenny says, I stopped sowing to multi-purpose to keep more of an eye on things. I don't always use the same multi-purpose. Absolutely. Kate says, I honestly don't bother keeping a diary. I put photos on Instagram, but I don't want to have it feel like a chore. I'm happy with my photos and having a relaxed approach. So this is exactly the point. Most of us, I suspect, and when I asked a question earlier, I think there was only 5 people that raised their hands to say that they keep a diary, but I suspect most of us don't. We just have a rough idea of when we do things. But is that the right way? Is it right? My thoughts, there's always a right or wrong. There's never a right or wrong way of doing things. We all do things differently. But would it be good to keep a record so we know what worked when and where? Turbo Swim says, all I want to know is when to sow things like onions for February. For instance, I know that for me, sowing leeks in April seems to work. There we go. So you're keeping a mental note, I guess, through not keeping a diary. Nicholas says, thumbs up. Oh, yeah, please do give us a thumbs up, a like, and subscribe. And don't forget to click the notifications so you know when we go live. Now, Idaho says, I sowed a bunch of old seeds, some 6 or 7 years old, and they germinated pretty well. I'd say 80%. You never know when it comes to old seed. And that's the point, is that you never know. And that's what the seed companies cannot guarantee, is just how well it's going to germinate. Gary says, as I lack experience, I need to look back on the past so I can assess and learn what works well and what doesn't for my area. I worry I'm forgetting what I've done over the last few years. Again, this is one of the things that I've thought a lot about, because I do call on my experience, but the seasons are changing, the weather is changing, and it changes from year to year. Potatoes are a good example. I still always do mine around the 17th of March, around St. Patrick's Day. My garlic around the 20th of September. But could that be different if we got it in later? Would that make any difference? Don't know. And this is why I'm asking. Scott says, we have access to so much info now with the technology, so I don't keep records. Yeah, but info is only as good if we are sharing it. And again, I know that most of the famous, well-known, the head gardeners, shall we say, they do keep detailed records. But it all depends on what is considered as detailed records. So my mouse is moving on its own. The pointer on my screen is moving on its own. Journal on iPhone. I know a lot of people use for record keeping. That's been mentioned. I'm going to look into that later. Turbo Extreme says, one big advantage of a supporters club pack, the seeds to sow are sent each month. Hopefully in the new year, I will assume you sending them. You just let me know when you want them again. Digger says, anyone can make a mistake and look a fool. The fool making the same mistake over and over again is now an idiot. And an idiot is defined as someone doing the same thing again, expecting different results. And that's a really good sort of analogy there, because yes, if you sow seeds at a certain time, let's say you sow, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example, something that really wouldn't work. Let's say you sow pumpkin seeds now on the hope you're going to get pumpkins in time for Halloween. It's not going to work. Not going to work. But if you sow in April, it would work. And that's the point of keeping records. Yeah. Nicholas says, previous years, I start off well, then my garden gets busy, doesn't it, for all of us? And I've also looked on Charles Down Diary to give me an idea of when to plant. I'm a bit hit and miss. Yeah. Garden diary. Garden Diary. Charles Dowding, I know, keeps very detailed records, but he's also very clear that that is what works for his garden. Different climate, different situations for everybody. Kate says, the number of times I lose labels and I'm just like, oh, well, be a nice surprise. But this is, I'm quite fastidious. I'm quite strict at constantly writing labels on my seeds. I guess you could say that's a type of record keeping, but I do keep record labels. I do keep labels. I do write my labels as soon as I sow seeds. And that is just because it's something I've always done. I sow this. I write the label before I sow the seed. The label goes in, and then I sow the seed. It's done, and it makes a big difference because you will never remember what you've sown where. Never remember what you have sown where unless you label it. Rob says, I would imagine most of us grow mainly the same things each year, so we should remember sow dates, etc., etc. Yeah, but again, I come back to the fact that sow dates are not a fluid thing. We might think that because I do exactly as well what I was going to say against. I sow potatoes on exactly the same day, etc., etc. But it's more about the weather that can affect it. Like if it's freezing cold in the middle of March, I'm not going to plant my potatoes out. And that's keeping detailed records on that is where I think there may be something. Jenny says, I'm with you there, Kate, apart from a nervous chilly surprise. Time Extreme says, yes, I keep a mental note so I know for me, onions in mid-February work, parsnips in April, etc. Most seeds can wait till May, especially beans, etc. etc. Digwet says, I sow my spuds 10, 14 or 22 weeks before I want to lift them. As I said, everybody does everything different. That's an absolutely spicy surprise. And things like French beans work best direct sown. Same as broad beans. Onions now get sown in my cold frame. Modules don't work for me for some reason. Fair enough. Fair enough. Jenny says, I put a label in, but the birds pull them out. Bloody birds. And Rob says, I printed the label for I sowed some seeds and then I forgot to sow the seeds. That's why I use pencil and white plastic labels, and I keep the pencil in my shed with them at all times. Jenny says, I try and dig the label in, but I can't find it. Scott, do you allotment see wildflowers as a suitable growing crop? Good question, Scott. And Digwell says, I use Nigel's method of putting electricity tape on the trays or pots, etc., because labels go missing. A life changing for me. See, I've done the electrical tape in the past, and I found that sometimes the labels would come off when they didn't quite stick to the pots. So I've done it, and it is definitely another option, but I stick with labels. On the sow dates, you are also well organised. I wouldn't know when I sowed things this year. Yeah, and this is where I'm thinking of things. I'm out loud and trying to add things to make this better. I remember Digwell's chili surprise video still makes me laugh. French beans, my slugs don't like them to grow here. I've had the same trouble. I also grow for the freezer, so we'll probably stick with the basics I eat. Fair enough. Fair enough. It's all about growing what you eat anyway, and that's very important. On that note, I haven't made a video for this bit. My kitchen's a mess, and as I said, everything's out of kilter. But what I have got, so last week, I think it was Digwell who set the cook along challenge. He said to cook a curry out of all the vegetables that I'm harvesting at the moment. Well, I have made an entire curry dish. So we've got a vegetable curry with carrots and courgette, peppers, tomatoes and chilies, and of course the good old curry paste, etc. I have got Bombay potatoes using my own potatoes and tomatoes. I've got onion bhajis using my own onions, and cauliflower rice in place of the rice. So what does it all taste like? Let's try first of all the curry, the cauliflower rice. That's good. That's good. Courgette and carrot. Nice, nice. Bombay potatoes. Mm-mm-mm. And finally, onion bhaji. That is absolutely lovely. Got to say, absolutely lovely. Digwell says, my point being, why would you save 5 buckets of the same spuds all on the same day, then half go off before using them? Yeah, everybody's different. Everybody's different. I get all mine in the same day, and that's that. It works for me. And then I just harvest the potatoes as and when I need them. So it works for me. Jenny says, either use electrical tape on seed trays or as a handle label. Thread it through and stick it to itself. Works well on those black potato buckets. There you go. There's an idea. That is an idea. And Digwell says, so do I. I always have a bog roll in the kitchen, in the fridge these days, just in case. Talk about the chili supplies. Nicholas says, I think that was me. Digwell was a Chinese dish, that one. Was it? Was it? Let's let me have a look at the notes that was sent over, because I checked on those. You were right. It was meant to be a Chinese meal. Damn, I got that wrong. Right, I'll have to do that. Damn. Damn. I got that wrong. Very, very sorry, everybody. So I've got to do the Chinese meal. I've got to do the bread, and whatever you choose for this week. So apologies. That was very, very wrong. As I said, everything's just a bit of a mess at the moment, so I'm a bit behind, but things will catch up. Which chili was it, said Digwell? Speaking of surprises, says Kate, my rhubarb from the Supporters Club seeds are going great. I had no idea the seeds did so well. Started in the hydroponics and now in the soil. I cannot believe how easy it is to grow rhubarb from seed. It's one of the easiest plants I've ever grown from seed. Perfect for growing in January. And I've always sort of said that I do that. You only need 1 or 2 plants of rhubarb. The rest can be do what you like with. They grow so easy. It's amazing. It really is amazing. I copied you, Digwell, but I'm going to take the credit. I'm not sure. It was a rogue paprika, supposed to be marred, rest on the plant. Wow. I'm growing your paprika. Love paprika. Can store grow pots in compost, especially if you have a polytunnel to let your bucket to sit in. Can store grow pots in compost. Oh, potatoes in compost. Yeah. Tyree Stream says, this year I sowed my parsnips every 2 weeks in April to extend the cropping. Did the same with beetroot. Actually sowed a row on Friday for hopefully an autumn crop. So beetroot and things like that, it's well worth making several sowings every few weeks anyway. And that's what I do. Carrots, beetroot, spinach, not so much spinach, I suppose. Radish is almost a weekly thing. But yeah. It's okay, Richard. We can wait another week and the curry bits look great. Yeah. I told you, my brain is just a complete and utter mess at the moment with all this work going on. Even though when I read things, it doesn't always go in. Yep, Chinese, I feel really underappreciated now. Thanks so much. Digwell, I will make sure, I don't know how because I've got a busy weekend next weekend, but I will make sure I do your Chinese using, I could do Chinese cabbage or something. I would do something Chinesey with the food that I'm harvesting, especially for you. You need to make notes, Richard, as you are disrupted. I try and make notes. I can't do it. I cannot do it while talking at the same time. ADD. I can't do 2 things at once. I've added it to the notes. That's why I got Jenny taking notes for me. Yeah. He may learn from his ideas and his grown. The Supporters Club rhubarb seeds make around £15 for my charity. So thank you, Sister Stuart. There you go. That's what I've said. That's why I include them, because I know there's some people who would like to sell them. And Jenny also says, my Supporters Club rhubarb is going really well too. Great news, everyone. Yeah. This is why I love growing rhubarb from seed. It's so easy to do. And gets great results, and they get a big plant from it. That tiny little seed can grow into a really, really big plant. That curry is really, really nice. That curry is really, really nice. Right, so one other thing, this week's mission was to do an inventory on my pots, and I can't get to them at the moment. I cannot, as I said, my garden's like Steptoe's yard, so I just couldn't get to my pots. I was hoping I could. Hasn't gone that way at all. Plus, I've been really tired today. Is anybody else, a slightly off topic this, anybody else suffering at the moment from just being tired? I'm finding myself, not so much Monday to Thursday when I'm at work, but on the weekends, I'm having a little afternoon nap, and I don't know where it's came from. Every evening this year, every evening this weekend, I've needed a little nap or in the afternoon. Is anybody else suffering, or is it just me? From the little acorns, mighty oak doth grow. Indeed. This is the great thing about growing plants, isn't it? This tiny little thing grows into something so big. It's like a god complex. Nicholas says, I think next year we should once a month all grow the same crop and see how they do in different parts of the country. It's not a bad idea. Why wait until next year? Let's start it now. Beginning of the month, I'm doing a seed of the month on the podcast tomorrow, which is pak choi. How does that sound? If we do, everybody out here today, you go. Everybody here today, this next week, we also pak choi, and we'll compare and see how it goes. How does that sound? Rob says, I feel so tired. It's crazy. Yeah, I know. I feel the same. 4-day week, Richard. It's nice. That's nice. It is nice. It is nice. It just doesn't. It sounds nice anyway. Still don't have enough time. Jenny says, I have a nan nap most days. My world is upside down. Why do I wake at 3 a.m. tired at 3 p.m.? So it's not just me. Good for me, Richard. Cool. Good idea, says Digro. Indeed. I like this idea. Kate says, I've had insomnia issues for a while. I'm always tired. Yeah, I'm not always tired. I just sat down every afternoon and fallen asleep. I was like going on Facebook and whatever, had my phone and I've fallen asleep with my phone in my hand like that. So yeah, something definitely going on there. I've been permanently tired since my long COVID episode. It's like my battery is half flat. That's something very odd, isn't it? Stuart says, Richard, you're getting old if you're like me, having a power nap in the afternoon. Perhaps I'm getting old. Perhaps I am getting old. I'm going for the pak choi. So does everybody want to get involved in that? And we also pak choi over this next week, and we'll compare it and see how we get on. How does that sound? Nicholas says, I link my diabetes to me being tired and often sleeping in the day, but don't sleep for that through night either. I sleep at night. I go bed early. I'm up early, admittedly, but yeah. I think it's the heat. It drains my energy. Yeah, it does do that. I haven't checked Instagram for a while, have I? Lots of people. Bearded Growers, Annie B Photos, Toby Clark, Plot 27, and the Messy Allotment here have all joined over on Instagram. Lovely to see you guys. Hope you are well. Great to see you there. Nicholas says, seed tray planted, PC, pak choi. Well, everybody can sow it in whatever way they feel. We all do it different, but we just also pak choi, because I think that'll be interesting to see how everybody's different styles is affected as well. We'll need photos, of course. I can't lie in. As soon as I wake up, I am up. I can't say I do that either. Toby Stoom says, I'm in an insomnia patch this week and now at the age where a nighttime toilet visit has started. Getting old sucks. Yeah. I mean, nighttime visit. I think I wouldn't say I've always needed a toilet in the night, but it's just one of those things. I don't put it as getting old. It's drinking before going to bed or stuff. Or directly into the veg bed. Whatever you want to do is what way I'm going to say it. However you want to do it, however you want to sow your pak choi, because everybody's different. We all do things differently, but we'll just try it and see how you get on. I will have to check my spreadsheet to see if I have any pak choi. So Digwell, actually, because the conversation was meant to be about keeping records. Do you keep records of all the seeds that you have in stock? You must have, I'm not being rude, a lot of time on your hand to go through and list all that. That sounds like a lot of work. Don't like pak choi, says Rob. There's always going to be, if we're going to do this, there's always going to be something that people don't like. So we'll work. If you don't like it, you don't have to participate. I'll put it like that. I will say I have 4 varieties. What have we got? Pak choi is Kate's tortoise Darwin's favourites. Check Instagram. I will keep checking Instagram now. It's because I've found StreamYard, which is what I use for these live stream, and they changed the layout, and they've made it smaller and smaller that I struggle to see on the small screen I have in front of me. So I'm having to use the screen off to the side. I'm the same, mate. I go to the toilet every morning at 4 a.m. Trouble is I don't get up until 7 a.m. 7 a.m. Half the morning's gone by that point. Try drinking volume up to early afternoon, then small quantities till bed. Reduces night visit. Yeah, that don't work for me. That is a great tortoise name, Kate. Yeah, Darwin. They panic, mate. Digway, yeah, of course I record my seeds. How would I know what to buy if I didn't? It's a good point. It is a very good point. And this is the point of keeping records, isn't it? As I was saying earlier, we keep records so that we know, or we've got a record of everything, and actually keeping a record of, I mean, who else here then? Throw this out. Who else here keeps a record of what seeds you have in your collection? Admittedly, my seeds would be a long list. Toby Street says, I might start taking notes of the notes so I can check what notes I took. This is exactly what I was talking about. When it becomes overcomplicated, you start keeping too many notes. You keep too many notes that you never know, or you keep too much information. Yeah, I'm confusing myself already. Rob says, worse for me when I go to the pub at the night time. Yeah, of course. And Digrat says, read it again. I do not get up until 7, a very wet bed. I'm sorry. I was a little bit slow on that. I told you my brain is fried at the moment. So a little bit slow on that. I tell you what, let's have a look at some of your photos that you've been posting this week. Been a good lot of photos actually going on into the club. So Kate, Chili Kate, she has grown her first ever pumpkin. Is wondering why she's never done it before. They grow so big, she says. As you can see, that's a nice looking pumpkin and doing very well. Steve's straw bale harvest. This is Digwell. He's been harvesting all these except for the beans. I don't think they came from a straw bale, if I remember his notes correctly. But you can see there's chilies, carrots, courgettes, and squashes, all from his straw bale garden. I'm impressed with the carrots myself. How you grew those in straw bales. That is impressive. Stuart's harvest after a trip away. He's been in the Isle of Wight again, if I'm not mistaken, for his summer holidays. And he's got tomatoes and courgettes. And is that a potato there? Let us know. But it's always good to see your harvest, as always. Now, Benno's, of course, sharing his humour. And you know what Benno's humour is like. There's a bloke saying to his wife, I would do anything for you. And his wife says, don't go to the allotment. So he kicks her off the cliff. Yeah. This is Kate and her courgette. One of the things that she's harvested this week. There's a good collection that she has harvested this week, which is well worth checking out in our Facebook group. And Nathan has also harvested all his all these tomatoes. I suspect there's many more, but these tomatoes look beautiful. And there's a good amount of change or difference right throughout the lot. So please do keep sharing your photos. We absolutely love seeing them. Please post them in our Facebook group, send to me via social media, or email me, richard@theveggrowpodcast.co.uk. That's richard@theveggrowpodcast.co.uk. So let's quick check on Instagram. Toby Clark says Pak Choi challenge sounds fun. How about what about comparing pumpkins for the Halloween special? That we can do. We can do that for the Halloween special. Messy Allotment here says, I love Pak Choi. And she says, I have a basic record, but I have too many, especially this year, that I need to update. Tell us more about what you record, what you keep track of. And Toby then says, never tried to grow before or found a good recipe for them. Well, they are going to be our seed of the month. I haven't told Chef Scott this yet, actually. Our seed of the month on tomorrow's podcast is going to be a Pak Choi. So you never know. Chef Scott might come up with an interesting recipe. Rob says, like going to a meeting about the meeting last week. Digger says, on the pics on Facebook group, TVGP is seed supplied by the Veg Grower podcast. Yeah, I can't jump on the Facebook group at the moment, but if you want to see Digwell's thing, go to our Facebook group. Jenny says, I don't keep a log of seeds, but I do keep them in these photo boxes so I can see what I need. I'm a bugger for buying seeds, so I never keep a list up to date. Absolutely. This is the same. I'm it's very easy to start a list. It's very easy to keep it very hard to keep it up to date. Toby Stream says, my seeds are in box by type of seed. I really just need to make my brain remember that in mid-February I sow leeks and in March I sow onions, etc. Yep, absolutely. As I said, whatever works for you. I keep my seeds in box by the type of seed as well. Rob, you need a pre-meeting, the meeting, then a post-meeting meeting. And carrots did very well in the bales, grew straight and very clean. Interesting. When I tried a couple of years ago, it didn't work for me. So how did you do? How did you get the carrots started in the bales, Digwell? Tell us more. I know it's probably on your YouTube channel, but I want to hear the story. Meetings. Actually, first time ever I managed to actually grow lettuce. I had to direct sow rather than trying in modules or trays. So it's whatever works. If it works for you to sow them direct, sow them direct. Sounds like a nightmare, Rob. At least we got paid and expensive. Digger says, use Pak Choi like any other Oriental green. Yeah, I love Pak Choi in Thai green curry. I love Thai green curry. Haven't had it in ages. That's going to have to go on my list. But I love Thai green curry. Scott says, I can do a Pak Choi dish. Fantastic. I just suddenly thought I hadn't let you know that it was Pak Choi for our seed of the month. So you heard it here first. Pak Choi, our seed of the month. I do like Pak Choi though. I do like Pak Choi. It's a delicious Oriental green. Everyone here is going to have to sow the Pak Choi now, and we want photos. We want videos of how you growing it, etc. right throughout, and we'll do the same next month and every month. We could do it weekly almost, couldn't we? But that might be a bit too much. Jenny says, Richard, are you still upside down, driveway, etc.? Are you wanting missions and recipes this week? Don't want to overload you. So I did set up the mission and the challenges, but I haven't got the cook along. I've got two in the back pipeline. I've got to do the bread recipe from a few weeks ago and the Chinese recipe. So we'll put that on for next week. The mission, I've got to do your mission, but we can if anybody wants to set a mission, hit it up in the comments. Hashtag mission. We'll do that. I'm still upside down. Yes. I've got a busy weekend. I'm in Colchester on Friday and Saturday, but we'll figure something out. If I don't get around to doing it, once everything's back to normal and settles down, it just feels so busy this year. Everything, and it just seems to have flown by this year as well. And I'm saying that as somebody that has a 3-day weekend. I should have more time in my hands than ever. It doesn't feel like it. Rob says, my wife loves green and the red Chinese curry. Oh, do love curry. You know that. I love curry. Jenny, Richard doing Digwell's Chinese. Yeah. Never... the messy allotment here over on Instagram says, I use it to make kimchi. Oh, interesting. Kimchi with pak choi. Interesting. Hashtag, it needs to be hashtag cook along. If you see along the banner along the bottom of the screen, then it will turn up. Make your own vodka from your own spuds. I've never done that before. I don't drink vodka, so that'd be an interesting one, but we'll see how it goes. Digler says, do the Chinese when you have the appropriate veg ready, maybe. I won't be too upset. Just don't talk to me at the next show. Oh, am I going to see you at Glee or anything? Remember to hit the thumbs up, everyone. Indeed, remember to hit the thumbs up, everyone, and all that jazz. Right, I think it's time for a bit of a rant of the week. And I'm kind of in that frame of mind. I think we're all having this sort of rant of the week, in that this year has been hard. It has been a hard year. Time seems to be flying by. So many things going on, and it has been dry. And our gardens have suffered from it. If your garden hasn't suffered from it, put your hands up. I know one person will put their hand up, but I have learned so much from these hard years that we're going to use moving forward. But my rant of the week has got to be, what is it about? I'll tell you what, I'm going to use the Angela Rayner thing. Angela Rayner looking to sell off allotments. That is going to be my rant, actually, because this is something I don't know the full story. I wasn't going to touch upon this, but now I'm sort of thinking about it and what I understand. It's going to be my rant of the week. So Angela Rayner has, and I believe actually Conservatives started it a few years ago, that they were allowing councils to sell off garden spaces, public gardens, in order to fit in more housing. Now, this affects allotments because our allotment sites could then be sold off and a big housing estate put on the allotments. But that would be a crying shame. We love our allotments. Or most of the time we do. It's our bit of escape. But not only that, allotments provide a massive service to the local area. And what I mean by that is that they're a bit of green space. Obviously, people who have an allotment, they go there, they socialize, they grow their own food. For many people, I often feel like that is their way of being social. A lot of the older generation on my allotment site, they go down their allotment, they be social, and that might be the only people they see all day. Friendships are formed, etc., etc. So there's a lot of good that allotments do. But from a nature aspect, there's also a lot of goods. Allotments have the widest range of different varieties of animal species, be it insects, birds, reptiles, snakes. They have those in allotments. There's because everybody is doing something different, everybody is growing different stuff. So there's a huge range of variety, and that goes on in allotments. So why should the council sell them off in order to put up more buildings? Buildings wreck the environment. I know we need housing. I'm not going to say we don't need housing, but there are better places that could be used. The problem isn't lack of ground space to build houses, it's the lack of proper thought into how we're going to build spaces, houses, homes moving forward. We've got population increase for a variety of reasons and not enough houses to go around, supposedly. But there's also a lot of empty spaces that could be used instead of allotments that are in high demand. A freedom of my allotment with my council, there was a freedom of press or freedom of information act article, and there's 117 people on the waiting list for an allotment in my area. There's a lot of allotments, a lot of people who want an allotment. No need to sell them off. No need to sell them off at all. There's just needs better thought about where these houses are to go. Jenny says, remember to hit the thumbs up, everyone. Digwa says, no glee for me, waste of time in my honest opinion. Fair enough, fair enough. Cornwall not been that dry the last few weeks. We've had a bit of rain, thunder and lightning, etc. But yeah, things have been going on. Rob says, still not got tomatoes on my plants in the greenhouses. I'm harvesting tomatoes quite regularly. Nice big ones as well. Some of the best tomatoes I've ever grown at the moment. And they are delicious. Some of those tomatoes are used in that curry from there. Nicholas says, lots of people don't have gardens and the allotment is their garden. It's also important for wildlife. Exactly. Why are we getting rid of them? Digwell says, the biggest part of the sell-off is that the councils no longer need government approval to remove ancient covenants, as I understand it. Okay. So I haven't read the article, like I said. I've just seen the headline. So I know the government is trying to make it easier for councils, but I think they're going the wrong way about it. I hope there will be some kind of legal challenge. They can do another U-turn then. Who knows? Who knows? Nicola, also once they've gone, the open space is lost forever. Exactly right there. Exactly right. That open space is lost forever if they are gone. Don't get me wrong, we need housing. And I think there's just a better way of doing it. There is just a much better way of doing it. Jenny says, someone just turned up. I'll watch the last 20 minutes later and send over the notes. Sorry, no problem, Jenny. Stuart says, allotments are amazing places. Even our doctor has started to prescribe gardening for well-being. So if they sell them off, what will they do then? Exactly right. I mean, I actually think that everybody who has a building, a flat, a house that has no garden space, they should, and it should be done when the places are being built, they should be offered an allotment or some sort of outdoor space. I believe there are some countries that actually do that. Because I think outdoor spaces, having your own outdoor space is so important. There's nothing like going out in your garden with a cup of coffee in the morning and just sitting down in your dressing gown and enjoying the birds in the morning in your own garden. A lot to be said for it. Turbo Storm says, we are lucky that our allotment site is managed by a trust set up by the Cadbury brothers, so they actively support our allotment. It should be safe, fingers crossed. I do think this, obviously this is a headline, so there's probably a lot of mistruths or headline grabbing stuff going on, so it may not be as black and white as it sounds, but it does make me worry. But this is always a threat with every allotment site. It is always a threat that it could be taken away from us and turned into houses, no matter what. Turbo Extreme, and imagine Birmingham Council will be happy as they are bankrupt. Easy money. Is it though? Is it though? And Digwat says, as I see it, one of the problems with allotments is that they are in areas in the middle communities, which make them ideal for putting houses on. New estates are being built further out of town. Yeah, that is one of the problems. And when you've got a local council who their boundary only extends so far, those out of town sites may not be in their catchment area. and therefore they could be losing the income from that. But what about, so we've got quite a few abandoned buildings around us, and it could be, there are, well, Brighton Barracks was abandoned for years and years before something finally happened. It took a long, long time. And there was a lot of perfectly good space that could be used there. It's now being used, but things like that are what need using. Problem with most new allotment sites do not have water on them. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not experienced that, but I think there are ways of working around that. Digwell says we have NHS plots. One family has 9 of them, stopping other 8 families from benefiting. This is where I do think some allotmenteers can be greedy, because if you have more than, I say technically I've got 2 allotments, but they're 2 halves of the same plot, so they are technically 1 allotment. But they could cut mine in half and give it to someone. They could cut it in 4 really and give somebody else a quarter plot. But that would be too small. That would be too small, in my opinion. What have we got on Instagram? I knew if we go, I didn't really want to go down this route of political, but I think it's important that we acknowledge allotments are important. Birmingham is buying the plots to pot dustbin rubbish on. Idaho says, I've always thought allotments were a wonderful gift opportunity for the people. Such a shame to sell it off to build more houses. Yeah, but the reason we have allotments, so who knows why we have allotments? There is a bit of a story behind it. But I'm going to tell you the story as I understand it, because I cannot remember all the details, but basically it was a politician during the Industrial Revolution. During the Industrial Revolution, people were leaving the country to move into cities, and one of the politicians, and this is one of the very rare times that I side with a politician. Anybody that knows me will know I can be very anti-politicians, but the politician in question, he recognized, obviously, Industrial Revolution, people didn't have refrigeration. A lot of people were used to working on farms and they had access to fresh food. But when they moved into towns, fresh food was not available. It was so easy. So the politician got worried, and that's why he created an allotments, so that these people moving in from the country into the towns could have access to places to grow fresh fruit and vegetables. And this is one of the rare things that I think allotments were good for. This was in the 19th century, so well over 100 years ago, well before the World Wars. World War II, I think, made them all the more important. But yeah, they were created to encourage people, or to tackle the Industrial Revolution and keep us all healthy. Keep us all healthy, more importantly. Bin men are still out. They still on strike, are they, or whatever? Rob says we have 4 quarter plots for the newcomers to see if they're good enough for a full plot. We do something similar on our plot, I've noticed lately as well. Sorry, I've just heard this pigeon cooing down the fireplace. Nicholas says some allotments don't seem to manage empty plots or not used properly to take forever to relocate. Well, this is what's going on with my neighbours. So they were kicked off. They were kicked off last beginning of this year, but they didn't attend it at all last year, and it's just an empty plot, and the weeds and everything else is terrible. I'm getting covered in brambles on my plot because I can't seem to get them back, etc., etc. And the council, they've evicted them, but they haven't cleared it. Nobody's going to take it on in its current state. What I would do, if I was in charge, I would fence off every single allotment plot, and then I would get like allotment chickens or allotment pigs. So when an allotment is empty, you get the pigs or the chickens in, and they will soon have it all cleared, and then we quite easily, while adding manure and stuff to the ground at the same time. It's easy, really, when you think about it. Idaho says we don't have allotments. Very few cities have community gardens. See, I would be looking at starting an allotment if I had access to land. I would start my own allotment site. It must be easy to do, he says, having no experience, of course. Birmingham, there's loads of allotments, so I hope they don't go down that route. You never know. You never go. Dig for victory, says Rob. It was allotment started before Dig for Victory. It's a little known fact. We can hear it as well. What the pigeon? Digrat says, "Bloody hell, Richard! I never knew you were knowledgeable. I sometimes store some stupid facts in my brain sometimes, and it comes out at useless times." Actually, our allotment site was 3 times the size of the present site. Houses built on the bit in the 1917s. So anything goes, I guess. So it's nothing new, isn't it? It is nothing new selling off allotment sites to pot up housing. So it's nothing new. Nicholas says, in some countries, the allotments, they are allowed to have a dwelling and spend summer on them. Yeah, I mean, they're almost like small holdings in some countries, but they are big. It's amazing, really. There's a lot of history that goes on in allotments, actually. Nicola, I've seen the overgrowth firsthand. It's got worse. It's much worse. Idaho says, I like that your allotments bring like-minded people together and newbies can learn from the old-timers. This is exactly right, actually. This is one of the things that does happen on allotments. Old-timers, I almost said old people then. That's not what I meant at all. Experienced people can share their knowledge with newbies quite easily. I used to have this really lovely chap on our allotment. He passed away a couple of years ago, unfortunately. He was in his 80s, fit as a fiddle, put me to shame. He was down on his allotment every day. He would often walk up and we'll have a cup of tea and what have you. But the knowledge that he had was amazing, and he would impart his wisdom. We would do things differently. So he'd never heard of no dig, and when I shared that with him, he was quite intrigued as to how well it worked. So not just experience, but different ideas that you get on allotments that can be shared amongst everyone. Digwell says, I did do a search on Google Maps of some of the 8 sites named for closure. There are many unattended plots on them. Yeah, and this is the trouble. When plots are unattended or not used or not in demand, that's when councils, and it's always been the case, they can say councils only have to apply councils only have to supply allotments if there's a demand for allotments. So there's a lot. So if there's not the demand for allotments, then there's no need for them. Is how councils can get away from it. So a long waiting list means there's demand, and that's if there's no waiting list, not enough demand. I think in the sort of 90s and the noughties, the waiting list did dwindle. There was less demand for allotments, but in the last probably since 2008, I think the demand for allotments has gone up. Nicholas says, only thing with pigs clearing site, Richard, is plastic left on plot by previous plot holders. I agree. It's not perfect, but I think if it's managed right, it's possible. Turbo Stream says, nothing is new. Most things have been done before. Trouble is the powers that be never learn. And sometimes they learn too well. Yeah. I know, it says, Digwell, it's a shame that people aren't interested in those allotments. I wonder why. It's different. And Digwell says, let's face it, guys, the population, indigenous, need housing, and the only way to stop the need is to stop breeding. Me, my kids, and 7 grandkids need at worst 11 houses. Yeah, I mean, we're not like India where you can have 3 generations of families living in one house. We are very much, each generation needs its own house. We are, I want to say spoiled. I don't know if that's the right word, but we are very lucky in this country to be able to do this sort of thing. But at the same time, housing is a need. Although I think people of my generation are having less and less children, I believe. So in 30, 40 years' time, there may be less of a need for housing. I don't know. Nicholas says, I was on a waiting list in Brighton for years. I never got one before I moved. And Rob says, we have 3 sites in our village. One is next to the cemetery, and the site keeps getting smaller. A dead loss for gardening. A dead loss then. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think how many we've got. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think 4 allotment sites in Littlehampton, maybe more, but at least 4. I think the Roots allotments, if anybody's heard of them, they're trying to get plots in everywhere as well. But we've got at least 4 sites, and my site it's 5. I've just thought of a fifth one, but my site is absolutely huge. There's over 200 allotments on my site, so it's a big area. And in fact, I've just remembered they're putting in a 6th one which you can access through my allotment as well. So there is demand in my town for more allotments, and they seem to be putting in more allotments. In fact, every time a new housing is built, new allotments are being built as well. So maybe something is in the pipeline there. Nicholas says, council stock needs managing better. If you are one person, you should still have 2 to 3 bed property. Also should be allowing to sell off social housing. Yeah, it's a difficult one, that one, because I've always thought that the idea of selling off social housing, they're going to get more than what they paid for building it, less maintenance, but that money that they made from selling the house should be invested in rebuilding more social housing. A lot of problems with it. I mean, I don't want to get into it. I don't want to get into that because I can say a lot of things there. In Turkey, they build upwards with the new members of a family taking the upper floors. That's why so many houses look unfinished. Interesting. Didn't know that. Did not know that at all. Brighton's got a lot of sites. Roots, let me know if you can afford one. Absolutely. Lynn, hello. There are so many brownfield sites that could be used for housing. Unfortunately, it's cheaper to build on greenfield land. Exactly. And that's exactly what I've said. Using brownfield sites, it should be what they should be using. I used the Brighton at Chichester as well, the Brighton Chichester barracks. They were empty for so long. They used for little bits, but they could have been houses. They are now, but they were 20 odd years. They were derelict, shall we say? They sell off at huge discounts. They still make more than They still make more than what it costs to build the house. So there's sort of quids in if they did it right. But again, it's very different. Idaho, what is social housing? So social housing, the way I would describe council housing, so the council would own properties and then rent it out at a very discounted price to those who were struggling. The trouble is now there's huge demand for social housing, council housing, because it is so cheap, and private housing is so expensive to rent. And even buying is not cheap either. Digwell says housing for public rental. It might be in an easier way. Nicola says they are council and now housing station, low rent accommodation. Yep. And Anna says in USA called public housing schemes. There we go. As I say, Section 8. There we go in Idaho. She calls it Section 8. It's all about management again, isn't it? It's all about management, something that we talk a lot about. Right, I think it is now time. We haven't got a mission or challenge for next week, so we'll just catch up on what we haven't done. We'll save that for next week. Next week, I want to talk about plans for next year. Does it feel too early to start thinking about a plan? No, it doesn't. I tell you for why. Because every time I cough, I hiccup. We're going to start making our plans for next year. So next year, I want to start talking about planning for next year, for 2026. Is that okay with you guys, or does that feel a bit too early to talk about that? Or would you like to talk about something else? let us know in the comments on this as we wrap up for today. I think it's time we start packing up. Over on Instagram, nothing going on over there. Nicholas says, nice topic. Digwell says, best to leave the country, lose your passport and come back as an illegal immigrant, free house phone, £70 pocket money, etc., etc. Yeah, I don't know the ins and outs, so I steer away from that. Lynn has started already planning for next year, and I started planning already for next year. So it seems like it's a good topic for next year to start thinking about next year. We'll talk about that next week. Right, let's get ready to get out of here. It's time to pack up and go. We'll do that next Sunday at 6. I'll play catch up. Hopefully I will be looking a bit tidier as well. Now I can have a proper bath, showers, things you don't really need to know about. Anyway, thanks so much for joining us. I think we've had a good chat again tonight. We will be back again next Sunday at 6 p.m. UK time, or whatever we call it here. You take care, guys. See you again then. Bye for now.